And as I mentioned, I want to talk about that story.
It's dark, Shammai. Your face is dark. They need more light.
What?
That's better.
Okay.
Much better.
Okay. The drama that unfolded. Oh, can we record this?
Yeah, it's recording.
Okay. The drama that unfolded when two tribes, Reuben and Gad, the leaders of those tribes, came to Moses and said, we don't want to cross the Jordan River because we have a lot of cattle, and area is very good for raising cattle. And it's a very fertile land, the Transjordan area. And Moses exploded in anger and gave a whole speech. How dare your brothers are going to go fight a war and you're going to stay here. And I want to talk about one word that he used. And I wanted springboard from Jason's class yesterday in memory of his brother, Alav Shalom. He talked about the word. Okay, so our title is Old Wine and New Flasks. That's, by the way, I stole that from the title of the book that my mother wrote several years ago. And how the special request of Reuben and Gad tribes gave us iconic modern Hebrew words. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to begin with like I said, Jason yesterday talked about the verse, Al tikach meito neshech v'tarbit. If you recall, he spoke about helping others who have fallen into hard times, and the Torah says don't charge him interest. Tarbit is the biblical word for interest. And in modern Hebrew, it's ribit. Now, if you change one letter in that word, okay, if you change the yud in tarbit into a vav, what will you get?
Tarbut. Tarbut, no?
Tarbut.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tarbut. And what does that mean? Culture.
Culture, modern.
And here you have a picture of a culture center in Megiddo, in Israel, Merkaz Tarbut Megiddo, which has, I'm reading from the subtitles, Teatron, theater, kolnoa, cinema, muzika, that's obvious, machol, dance, and yeladim. But wait a minute. If that's the case, then what is that word doing in our parsha? So you have to be careful, because that is the modern Hebrew word. I want to talk about this word. It's very interesting. So where does it appear in this story of the Reuben and Gad tribes? Oh, and if Isaac was here, he would tell you it's very special meaning for him. He went to a school in Rokitno, Poland called Tarbut, where they spoke Hebrew, was part of the revival of the Hebrew language, and until, of course, the events of the Holocaust started. And he always talks with pride about attending the Tarbut school in Rokitno. So already we can say that back in, so when was Isaac a teenager? In 1930s, right? Or late 20s. Already it means culture. Already means culture. But in our parsha, it's going to mean something else. Here's the context. Moses replies, after they come to him, they say, we don't want to cross the Jordan. We have a good reason. We are cattle people. This is a good area. He says to them a whole long speech. Your parents, they sinned in the spies. They didn't want to go into the land of Israel. And now, v'hinei kamtem tachat avoteichem, tarbut anashim chataim, lispot od al charon af Adonai el Israel. And the English reads, and behold, you have now risen, you, the tribes of Gad and Reuben, have now risen in place of your fathers as a tarbut of sinful people. I purposely didn't translate it, to add to the wrathful anger of the Lord against Israel. So he's very angry at them, and he uses this word. So you'd be tempted to say, oh, you're bad cultured people. You people who don't want to go into the land of Israel, and your economic endeavors are more important to you. But that's not what it means, okay? That's the modern meaning. We're going to get to it. So what do the commentaries say about this tarbut? So first of all, this word is appears only once in the entire Bible. And there's a Latin word for that, hapax leguminon. And now, if you're in a cocktail party, I don't know when you'll be in one, but I'm sure you will be one soon. You can say these two words. Everybody will quiet in the room, and you'll impress everyone that you know these two Latin words. And you'll say, "Oh, this word is a hapax legominon." When a word appears once in an entire text, that's the Latin term for it. So we hear the tarbut is a hapax legominon in the Bible. It's the only place. So you'd think all the commentaries would jump and try to explain to us, but interestingly, let's get back to the basic outline of the story. I already mentioned 1 and 2. 3. This is part of Moses' angry response when he chastises them and say, "Are your brothers to go to war while you stay here?" And he goes into a description of what happened previously in the previous generation of the people who went out of Egypt, and they sinned several times, complaining, not wanting to go into the land of Israel, claiming it's a bad land. And then he relents, number 4, only with a major caveat. If the men of the Gadites and the Reubenites will fight with the rest of the Israelites to conquer the land of Canaan, only after they help their brothers and they fight and they subdue the Canaanites, then they can return to the Transjordan. But if they fail to join their fellow tribes in subduing Canaan, they will not be given the Transjordan land, but will instead have to cross the Jordan River and inherit in Canaan. And then they agree. The Reuben and they actually say, "Yeah, we'll do it. We're happy to go and help our brothers fight the wars." And then only the men, of course, and then we'll come back while the women and the children and the cattle will remain in the Transjordan area, and we'll fight. And after we settle the land, then we will go back there. So that's the basic outline of what happened. And now let's go back to our word. So Rashi doesn't say anything, and Rashbam, but Ibn Ezra, he was a linguist. He loved the Hebrew language and always tried to explain difficult words. He says tarbut comes from the type of verbs, and then he brings an example from Eicha. We're going to read Eicha in 2 weeks, and Tisha B'Av. And in the one of the chapters there, the verse appears, Asher tipachti veribiti. Those whom I bore and reared, my foe has consumed. So ribiti is the same root of tarbut, according to Ibn Ezra. So to rear, to grow, that's how he ties it in. He says those two words are connected. He brings another example from Megillat Esther, Al Kol Rav Beito, the person who was in charge of the entire household. V'hata'am gidul hashanim. So this means as they grow in years. So back to the tarbut, Anashim Chataim, it's, how do we go back? If I want to go back. Go back, one more. So back to our verse.
We're actually stuck on the first.
Yeah, there's nothing on the screen. Nothing that you said has been on the screen.
We're seeing the first slide.
This has old one. It's just,
Is this it? This one?
Yeah.
You see it now?
Yeah, now we see your cursor moving now.
Yeah, but you're just on that same first page.
Reuben and Gad tribes gave us iconic modern Hebrew words. That's it.
Here we go. Yep.
Okay, now it's moving.
Great.
Okay, so Tarbut Anashim Chataim. Now we'll take Ibn Ezra's explanation. You rose in place of your fathers as a multitude, a lot of people, of sinful people, Anashim Chataim. So simply means, it comes from the word Rav, a lot. So you have grown into this group of sinful people. That's Ibn Ezra, how he views this word. Now we go to I need something to move the mouse. It's not moving. There was a commentary called Targum Onkelos. He lived in the 1st century, and modern research says that he actually, this perush started in Judea, not in Babylon, in Judea, because there's several Greek words in the Targum Onkelos. So around 50 CE, and they assumed that he was a proselyte, that he was a Roman. So there's a picture of him. He was a Roman who converted. And so when he translates, obviously when you translate, you have to interpret. So you have to explain this word. So I bolded it. V'hakamtun batar avatechun talmidei guvraya chavayava. And behold, you have now risen after your father's disciples, talmid. Many of you know that word, talmid, student, disciple of sinful people. So tarbut, in his understanding, is disciples. So Moshe is telling them, you are disciples of sinful people in your request, which is a sinful request. So now let's see how our English translations, what did they say? They said, Chabad.org says, and behold, you have now risen in place of your fathers as a society of sinful people. So they understand the word tarbut as society. I'm not sure where they got that from. Which commentary, what root did they tie it into? Maybe they were influenced by the modern meaning, which we will get to. In the JPS translation, the Chumash that we use, and now you, a breed of sinful men. So who is that similar to? Which commentary?
Ibn Ezra.
So that's, yes, correct. That is the Ibn Ezra's understanding, right? A whole group, a big group, a multitude of people, a breed of sinful men.
How about Bill Eisenberg's definition?
I'm sorry?
Ready? It's a mob of
A mob. Okay. I like that.
negative connotations.
Yes.
Now,
But definitely, as Bill points out, definitely, whatever the exact meaning of tarbut is, it's negative. It's certainly a very negative connotation that it's used in the context is. And so that is the biblical meaning of the word. Then we move to the Mishnah in Talmudic times. There, the word already it grew. The word actually grew in meaning, and it became to mean the whole realm of education, morals, behavior. But still, in the negative context, mostly you'll find it in the Talmud in this phrase, this idiomatic phrase, Yatsa letarbut ra'ah. For example, it says about Elisha ben Avuya, one of the sages who became a heretic, and that he Yatsa letarbut ra'ah. So literally strayed into bad behavior or left the straight path. So again, tarbut is already a much bigger word. It means the whole way of life, but it's still negative. And then we go to our beloved tarbut in modern Hebrew. We owe that to this man, very learned person, a linguist, really a polymath, a historian, rabbi, really a man of many skills and very learned. Zev Yabitz, born in Poland, right, not far from Isaac's town in Kolno, then lived in Israel, and many years became a rabbi, did a lot of research, died in London in 1924. And he was, like Ben Yehuda, a revivalist of the Hebrew language, always looking for new words. And his shita was a little bit different than Ben Yehuda's. He said we should stick to the words that are in the Bible, not create neologisms, but rather just take them and add new meanings to them. And this is what he did with this word. He said, we need a word for culture. Until then, they would say kultura. They would say the word with a Hebrew accent, kultura. He said, well, let's go back. And just because in the context of the story of Reuben and Gad, it's negative, that doesn't have to bind us. We can use that word to, by itself, if we don't add the sinful people part, if we just say the word tarbut, we can use that for culture. And it caught on. And today, every newspaper has, every respectable newspaper has a section called tarbut, right? The culture section, sometimes, as you see in the picture, tarbut v'sifrut, culture and literary. And it's a positive word today. But for the final slide, it's still used, the idiomatic phrase, tarbut anashim chataim, whenever you want to criticize another person or another group of people. A lot of, especially people who are familiar with our sources, they'll use that to describe that other group that they think is doing terrible things. And they'll call them tarbut anashim chataim. So what's that picture doing there? So I found this article on an online site in Israel. This person who was very, very environmentally conscious went to the beach and saw this terrible, you see trash all over the beach. People left plastic bags and cans, and it's dirty and it's terrible. And he wrote an article about it. And in that article, he said, who are these barbarians who did this? These are tarbut anashim chataim. So there you go. You can still use it in a negative context when you're talking about that other group, right? Those people that you can't stand them. And you see, I would agree with him. The people who did this, yeah, maybe they are tarbut anashim chataim. So we saw here how this word evolved from the original biblical meaning, used as probably to mean a breed, a multitude, a big group of people who did a bad thing, and then through the Talmudic times and all the way to modern Hebrew, where it's become a positive word meaning culture, and we hope that we will grow in our Talmud, in our culture. All right. So I think, any questions, comments, or concerns?
Why did Rabbi Yavetz pick a negative word for the word culture, which is
a good question. I think he wanted to redeem it from its negative context. So again, his shita, his method was to stick to the original words, not to add suffixes and prefixes. He actually got criticized for it by other linguists, by Yosef Klosner and others, who said there's nothing wrong with creating new forms. But he preferred, he said, we have this rich heritage, but we can add meanings. So he liked that idea of, still, it's the same word, right? The word tarbut, it's the same letters, same vowels as in the Torah, right? But he said we can add a whole new meaning to it and use it for culture. So he did that in other words too. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Great.
All right. So let me.
Yashkoa.
Okay. So there we go. How do you stop?
Thank you.
It's not working. Can't find the mouse.
there it is.
Oh. Okay. So now.
Stop recording.